What is up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, the preview edition. Bills coming off the bye week. The Carolina Panthers on the road. Must-win situation. We're going to get into all of our thoughts on Bills versus Panthers on this episode of Shout, which is brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. And right now, Ryan, every week during the football season, it is Slider Sunday. Looking to elevate your food game during football season, Tops has teamed up with King's Hawaiian once again to bring you delicious ideas for terrific sliders from around the country. Every Sunday is an opportunity to enjoy tasty sliders made your way, and now you can win big while doing it. Vote for your favorite slider weekly for a chance to win a fan cave makeover. Head over to topsmarkets.com/slider Sunday for more information. And it's a Sunday game. It's a 1 p.m. start. Breakfast pizza time? I would say it's Tops breakfast pizza time.
I agree. I think you got to get there early, put in your order, enjoy some breakfast before a 1 p.m. kickoff. Nothing better than a 1 p.m. Bills kickoff.
So we're going to get into our keys to the game prediction at the end of the show. But I wanted to step back for a minute and just, taking the pulse of the football world on this matchup. And, I think on the inside, we're very in touch with why the Bills have struggled defensively, specifically against the run. And I wonder if there isn't just a little bit of a disconnect nationally at what I think the Bills are hoping Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi, potentially Max Hairston, getting an injured Taylor Rapp out of the lineup, what that could potentially mean against a team in the Carolina Panthers. Like, let's be honest, the teams that they've really crushed. I mean, the Miami Dolphins, the Dallas Cowboys defense. I mean, those are amongst the worst in the league. And I thought hearing from Sean McDermott earlier this week say they showed up on Monday, they got in pads on Monday. You're able to do that once or twice per season, depending on and there's a CBA part in the CBA that allows teams to get an extra practice day at certain parts of the schedule. They took full advantage of that this week. And I have a feeling that this defense, a very proud defense under Sean McDermott, is going to come out and really look to lock down Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle in that run game.
Yeah, I think that they've heard the noise from the outside, how this is one of the worst run defenses in the league. And, listen, they have been. We saw Atlanta run wild on them. We've seen a lot of teams have success on the ground, but now you have that reset button. You've had the time. The bye week, you've had some time to kind of sit there if you're a coach and reevaluate what's going on, what's wrong. And now you have some reinforcements coming in, Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt up front. I think that's going to greatly help this run defense. And if I'm the Bills, I'm going into this matchup. And, it's been one of my keys here for multiple weeks. Sell out to stop the run. I'm going to say dare Andy Dalton to beat this team come Sunday afternoon and do everything possible to stop Hubbard and Dowdle.
Yeah, and I think that what the defense looks like on Sunday is still a little bit of a mystery outside of the return of Hoyt and Ogunjobi, because you have two guys at linebacker in Milano and Bernard who are very likely going to be questionable heading into this game. We'll get the final update from the Bills maybe while we're doing this podcast here. But Sean McDermott kind of set it up like those guys were going to be questionable, along with Dalton Kincaid, which, again, if Dalton Kincaid can't make it back from the oblique injury with the full bye week, I mean, that is going to be equal parts disheartening, but at the same time, maybe something where if you're Sean McDermott, you're not looking to rush him back so that he's as close to 100% against the Kansas City Chiefs next week. I get that part of it, but you're really hoping that he gets back. But before we get to Kincaid in this offense, defensively, if it's Dorian Williams and Shaq Thompson on Sunday, does that change how you view this? One of the big, conversation points this week has been Bryce Young, Andy Dalton, Mike White. Throw any of them back there, and it's about the same kind of matchup defensively for the Bills, right? Like none of those guys is really scaring you. At the same time, if the Bills have to go to this, their two backup linebackers in this game, does that scare you at all in terms of trying to stop the run?
No, it doesn't. Just because, no offense to Terrell Bernard, but he hasn't necessarily been the most effective player against stopping the run so far this season. He's been underwhelming, thrown around a little bit. Shaq Thompson has been Buffalo's best linebacker. I don't think you can dispute that. So you have him in the lineup. Dorian Williams has some, hiccups in his game. He isn't necessarily the athleticism match up necessarily with the production in terms of what you want to see. I know he's a tackling machine. He had over 100 tackles last year, but sometimes the instincts aren't what you want them to be. He's not making the plays that you want to see from someone with that great of athletic traits. But I still think that these two linebackers can do enough come Sunday with a defensive front looking a little bit different, a little bit more juiced up. With Hoyt, with Ogunjobi, I think they're going to come in motivated, as I already said, not just those two, but the line as a whole. And with the linebackers coming in, maybe with some fresh lanes, so to speak, I think that they're going to be able to get the job done.
So the Bills made it official today. They are going to place Taylor Rapp, safety, on injured reserve, which now, what that looks like on Sunday. I think most of us think it's going to be Jordan Poyer, and Sean was very complimentary of Poyer when talking about him today, but he also said that they're still kind of trying to figure things out. That might be a little gamesmanship, maybe not want to put Poyer out there. So the Panthers, who have done their own gamesmanship, bringing in Mike White this week, just playing that tit for tat back and forth. But with Rapp out of the lineup right now, I feel like this is going to be a very big game for Cole Bishop, because if you get Poyer out there, who played at a pretty high level in place of Bishop for a few series last week or 2 weeks ago when he was cramping, I think it's a spot where if you're getting better play at the Rapp spot, you got to expect the young second-year safety to raise his level of play. And, if you go out here on the other side of it and Poyer plays a great game and you're still, Bishop misses a couple tackles, maybe he's beating coverage, whatever the storyline is after the game, then I think you're really going to hear a lot of noise about maybe going with an all-Jordan safety duo with Poyer and Hancock against the Chiefs the following week.
When it comes to Bishop's game on Sunday, tackling is my only concern in terms of, is he going to be able to tackle well, because missed tackles have been an issue for Rapp and obviously Cole Bishop. But I feel like this is a golden opportunity for Cole Bishop to have a great game. And this is not a knock on Taylor Rapp. This is more of a Jordan Poyer type of comment. No one knows this defense better than Jordan Poyer in terms of where to line up, what to do, the communication aspect of it. And if Poyer is out there, he's going to make sure that Cole Bishop is in the right spot, in the most advantageous spot. He's going to be talking on the fly with this kid. And I feel like that's going to really benefit Bishop in terms of what to do, the confidence level. I know that Jordan Poyer is not the same player in 2025 that he was 3 years ago, even 2 years ago. But he did look good in that Atlanta game in terms of knowing his responsibilities, where he should be. The angles might not always be the best, but he's going to put himself and Bishop in the best spots possible in this game. So if Bishop does have a down game, my alert is going off, and you really do have to consider Jordan Hancock or looking at what's out there on the trade market.
The Tetwara McMillan in this game is somebody that I'm watching, because I'll be interested to see how he fares against the Bills defense that, if you take that Drake London performance aside, hasn't really given up a ton of huge days to, number one wide receivers historically. Maybe that's changed a little bit this year. Overall DVOA defense, they're, bottom 7 in the NFL. So not a lot's been good on that side, but you have Benford, who's coming off of, he was banged up at the end of that last game, came back into the game, was an Achilles. So the break was probably great for him. And then we'll see on Maxwell Hairston, Sean McDermott's not closing the door. I don't know even if he were to be active, if this would be a little bit too much too soon in terms of starting him. But if he's somehow on the field starting opposite Christian Benford on Sunday, you're going to have to contain a lot of members of Bills Mafia, because there's going to be some juice flowing through the fan base, because this is, I know we talk a lot about these trades, Ryan, but to me, the cornerback move that the Bills have at their disposal is Maxwell Hairston. Like, that's the guy they spent a first-round draft pick on. And I know that there's, all of this anxiety over the ghost of Kyer Elam and what happened that rookie season. And I think Maxwell Hairston's a different player. I think he's got a different approach. Hearing him talk about, what this opportunity is going to be, what he's been doing away from the field as he's prepped for this opportunity, studying the mistakes that he made during training camp, watching Trey White, watching Dorian, watching Christian Benford, and figuring out, all right, how are they winning? What can my skill set, when I get my chance, how can I win in the same types of ways or in different ways where maybe they're not winning? So I think, to me, cornerback, with how good Maxwell Hairston has looked in practice this week, it's fallen down to the bottom of the list in terms of the priority list when it comes to trading for a veteran. Where do you kind of fall on that? Because I know that at one time I think you were pretty high on making a move for a corner.
I'm probably in the middle. It's not the bottom for me. I still want to see some depth there because of the uncertainty of Dorian Strong's injury. Neck injuries are just, he could be shut down for the year easily. And he's a player that, if I knew he was coming back, then it would go very far down the list because it's all about how much trust you have in those guys. And Dorian Strong, to his credit, came in, was getting rotated in, looked the part, was playing well. If he's out for the year and now it's, Max Harrison's coming back, you still have Trey White. I still have some concerns about the overall depth of the outside boundary cornerback position, but I'm not necessarily going out there saying and advocating that that's your number one priority. I still think that linebacker, wide receiver, safety would all be higher on the priority list. So maybe, now that I'm saying that, maybe cornerback would be at the lowest in terms of the trade market, but in terms of my concerns, it's still up there. So, that's kind of where I sit on the matter at this point in time. And when I'm really looking at here for Hairston is I'm not even looking for him to necessarily start in this game. I want to see him get the rotational reps that Strong was getting, and how can he take advantage of those? How does he look in those moments for the Bills when he gets into the game, if he gets into the game? You and I are both saying that McDermott hasn't ruled out that possibility. For me, though, going back to the original conversation for Tet McMillan, do the Bills have a philosophical change? Do they run more man in this game based on what they've seen in man versus zone this season? I'm not ruling it out. I think that the Bills saw that second half of that Atlanta game was a lot different for the defense. It looked a lot better. Yes, you're risking giving up more big plays in those moments, but I do want to see if with the bye week, if they're feeling more comfortable running a little bit more man, and maybe making that more of their primary defense versus the zone where they're just giving up way too many easy catches. They're not making enough plays on the ball.
I think also, Andy Dalton is probably going to push the ball down the field a little bit more than Bryce Young does. And that could be good for Tet McMillan. It could be poor depending on, I'm talking to Alex Zetlow from Charlotte earlier this week. Andy Dalton has built a connection with Xavier Legette, when he's been in the game with him. So if that's something they want to try to do and push the ball down the field to Legette, I think you take your chances there and you like some of the matchups that you have, even though, I know that there's been a fair amount of criticism for Tre'Davious White, but I think in coverage, to me, my biggest area of concern for him is in the run game. And I think you have a Christian Benford who's probably very motivated to make some noise in this game. And as you kind of build up towards that game against the Chiefs next week. All right, let's flip gears here, go to the offensive side of the ball. And I think, if we're talking about major keys, to me, it's got to be establishing James Cook in this game somehow. And obviously, I think the easiest way to do that is to get your running game going. The Bills had no problem doing that through the first 4 weeks of the season. James Cook ends up being the AFC, player of the month on the heels of his performance through those games. I just think when in doubt, get the ball in James Cook's hand. And I think also what else we've talked about, get him lined up in the formation somewhere. Line him up in the slot. Put Khalil Shakir on the outside with some type of hybrid 11 personnel with Keon Coleman on the other side and Cook acting as your slot receiver, especially if Dalton Kincaid doesn't go in this game. We'll see what that ends up being as we monitor that closer to kickoff, although I do think he probably ends up playing, but we'll see. I think James Cook has to be a factor in this game.
I don't disagree with that. I'm going to push it, though, to it has to be a factor in the pass game. He needs to be a factor as a receiver. We know what he can do as a running back, and I know that he's going to do well in that area. The fact that he has been erased as a receiver for the most part, that blows my mind. Coming out of the bye, he needs to be factored in. You need to factor in Ty Johnson in that role when he's on the field as well. Utilize your backs, get the ball in their hands as receivers. They can do a lot of damage. I think back to that Detroit game last year, which ended up being a shootout of sorts, and getting the ball in their hands, Ty Johnson making a big play as a receiver early in the game, and how they were utilized. And now it's just kind of gone away. And, I talked about a shift in defensive philosophy. I think there needs to be a shift in offensive philosophy. I think the Bills sat down at the start of the season and they said, okay, we need to be a balanced attack. and see how it goes. And they win their first 4 games, and minus the Jets game, though, none of them were very comfortable wins. It felt like the New Orleans Saints were in the game late. Miami was in the game late. All of those, and obviously they needed a big-time comeback against Baltimore, and the list kind of goes on there. It feels like they were playing clock management, keep the ball in our hands, and I don't want to see that in this game. And I know that kind of goes away from James Cook. James Cook will still get his touches. I want to see them come out, let Josh Allen throw the ball quite a bit in this matchup, sling it around. I feel like teams are kind of expecting runs on early downs and these short downs, and let Allen be Allen. Let him throw the ball downfield. Let him throw it in the intermediate range. So for me, it's about getting away from that game management and holding the ball, because this, I think that the Bills realized that there were warts on this defense and there were issues. But at the same time, the way that they've been managing it, there's been more turnovers for this offense. It's led to some issues where, protecting the ball or just kind of letting the offense run the ball down the field and be more 50-50 or whatever it is, it's not necessarily working. So this game, they open things up on offense. They let Allen be Allen, and I think you see good results.
So there is, if you take a look over at the Bills cap chart on wherever you want to go, over the cap, our guy, Mike Giannetti over at spottrack.com, and you go through the top 10 cap numbers on the Bills roster right now. You get down to number 8, and you're going to find the 4th highest offensive cap hit. 5th highest, behind Josh Allen, Dawson Knox, Deion Dawkins, and Connor McGovern. Wide receiver, Curtis Samuel.
Yep.
He's set to play this week. Okay. Josh Palmer suffered an ankle injury 2 weeks ago. He has already been ruled out. To me, this is a week for Joe Brady, for Curtis Samuel, going back to Carolina, where they first met, where they first, Joe Brady became enamored with Curtis Samuel's skill set. To me, it's all been leading to this game, because you need Curtis Samuel to be a factor in this game without Palmer, because I just am not at a place yet. Keon Coleman could go out this weekend and have a 100-yard game, a 2-touchdown game. I'm just not predicting that. To me, this has to be a game where, to your point, if you're going to start spraying the ball around the field, if you're Josh Allen, Curtis Samuel is very likely going to be involved. Find a way to get him into spots where it's not just the gimmicky stuff. I think Curtis Samuel can win one-on-one outside. So when it comes back to the scheme changes and what you're going to do from a plan perspective, maybe allow guys to do something a little bit different outside of the comfort zone that, if you're Joe Brady, I think that you've placed a lot of these players in.
Yeah, I'm going to stop short of calling it a Curtis Samuel revenge game, but I do think you can get him involved. You saw him in the regular season game against the Chiefs, getting open, making plays, the Denver game in the playoffs. This is someone that can run routes pretty well. He has good speed. He can create separation. And if you're without Joshua Palmer for the foreseeable future, which it feels that way, obviously, being week to week after suffering the injury against Atlanta, let him assume that role. Let him stretch the field early. See if he can come up with a big play. Let him run across the middle of the field out of the slot from time to time. Move him around. Let him get comfortable. You paid him a lot of money to be a factor for this team, and you haven't used him as one. And I get it. Injuries have played a big reason for that, and he has not been able to stay healthy. But you need him now. And he is a player that can make plays for this offense, and I want to see that on Sunday.
It is also funny, a side note, seeing the second highest cap hit on this team being Dawson Knox, and the $14.5 million number is alarming. And you wonder, man, why haven't the Bills done anything to that number to bring it down? And you look at next year and the $10 million in cap space that can be opened if they move on from him. And I got to also think that Dawson Knox is a little bit, the sand is falling through the hourglass on his time with the Bills potentially. And they've made a lot of hard decisions over the years. And, the thing that's always been mentioned is his relationship with Josh Allen, the leadership. But at that cap hit, to be as, most of the time as uninvolved in the offense as he's been, I'd like to see a little bit more from him, especially if Kincaid can't go this weekend.
Yeah, if you're paying him that much money and Kincaid can't go, throw him some targets as well. And if I'm Knox, I'm a little bit frustrated because He catches the first touchdown in that game against Atlanta. And was he targeted again in that matchup?
That's a good question. I don't think so.
I don't think he was. And if he was, it was maybe one other time. You can't convince me that Knox wasn't open again in that game. And at one point, he was a player that Josh Allen trusted more than anyone on this offense because they have been together so long. It's a bad contract. There's no disputing that. I think that Brandon Beane will project players at times on what they can become based on their athleticism, their target usage, and things like that. And, in the case of Knox, it just did not work out. So no disputing the contract being bad, but he is still a player that has made some big time catches. He's been the first touchdown reception for this team and come playoffs almost every single year for the Bills. So they can count on him. They know what he can do. It just hasn't happened this year because Kincaid, when healthy, has been having an outstanding season. But now Kincaid might not be in the picture. So I'm not saying he needs to have the target share or play the same type of role that Kincaid has played, but you need to get him more involved.
Daryl says it best here. It's a Joe Brady revenge game. Empty the tanks on offense. Get back to scoring high 30s. I do think this is the kind of game where inside the Bills meeting room all week, in between meetings, in between practice, guys are talking about, getting everything in sync to go out there and really just deliver a performance to make a statement for their coach. I mean, rewind the clock a little bit, how that ended in Carolina for Joe Brady. It wasn't pretty. I mean, he had to kind of search for his next opportunity. He comes in with his tail between his legs as the quarterback's coach after being this high rising young coach in the NFL into Buffalo. And obviously he's made the most out of his opportunity and things have gone really well in Buffalo since then. But I think that he's going to want to prove something on Sunday to the Carolina Panthers brass.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the whole pairing up with Matt Rule obviously was a disaster from the start. It wasn't something where they were all on board with the decision, and that led to his time being the scapegoat there. And obviously he was not the issue. So he's going to come in with a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. Hopefully that doesn't mean more trick plays or anything like that. And he just kind of lets Josh Allen be Josh Allen and put up a lot of points and score at will.
All right. Prediction time, Ryan, before we get out of here. I will start with you start with yours.
All right. Yeah. No offense to any Panthers fans. I saw one person in here predicting the Panthers win. I have the Bills winning this one in blowout fashion, I guess. 38-17 Buffalo.
Oh, my gosh.
This is a game where they go all out. Allen is throwing the ball down the field. You get Cook more utilized as a receiving back for this team, and they get right in this game, going into a big-time matchup against Kansas City.
Same brain, as usual. 38-20 Bills.
Wow.
I think the defense gets involved in the party this week. I mean, I have paid attention every single week when with the portions of practice that we're able to watch, and the turnover circuit that they do in practice every single day is something that is just has to be part of their identity. So I think they're going to find a way against a team that is stepping up in weight class. The Carolina Panthers, I know they're riding a 3-game win streak, but this is a signature win possibility in a big time moment with a veteran quarterback. And I just don't think in that moment they're going to be able to perform to the level that they have. I believe in the Bills' run defense against this team. And I think they're going to come out, to your point, try to punch them in the mouth a little bit. They're going to get Ogunjobi back. I think they're going to be flying around at the second level. I think they're going to have a healthy secondary, which is very important as well. And once the run game doesn't work at some point early in this game, then you basically neutralize it if offensively you get back on track. So I think the Bills do that. I think they get, like I mentioned, I'm big on Curtis Samuel this week. I think he could be more in this offense, has to be more in this offense than he's been. And I think this is a really good week to start it, because without Palmer and potentially without Kincaid, or maybe even not at 100%, you're going to start looking around that room looking for somebody else to make a kind of statement. And maybe that ends up being Keon Coleman. He's my player to watch on Sunday on Bills Kickoff Live. But I'm going to stick with Curtis Samuel, because I still think the reason he's still around is because when healthy, they believe he's capable of a big game.
Yeah, I think Samuel is in line to have a nice game. I think this is going to be a big Khalil Shakir game, and not just those quick passes behind the line, which he's great at. Don't get me wrong. I think you're actually going to see him do what he does best and make plays, in that intermediate range or maybe 10 yards downfield, break some tackles. I think this is going to be a big Shakir game. So, it's buy Mageddon in fantasy football. So if you have Shakir, put him in your lineup. And if he does poorly, well, sorry, there's nothing I can do about it.
I've been dipping my toe in ice water all morning long. Plan is to get on the plane tomorrow AM on my way to Carolina. I probably could have just put my feet up and said, you know what, I'm injured. I gotta take the week off, but I'm not. I'm going. Getting after it in Carolina. So the ankle is doing well, Greg. Thank you so much for asking. Better than it was on Wednesday. So we'll see how this weekend goes. All right. For Ryan Talbot, I'm Matt Parrino. Make sure you check in with us after the game. Shout post game. We'll bring you everything, our reactions to the game out in Carolina. And I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Ryan, before we get out of here, though, final word. We are coming back to Wingnuts in 8 days.
Yeah, crazy. Night before the Chiefs game. Join us. That's going to be, the game of the season. It's on the schedule, circled. I think when that schedule comes out, it's going to be a great atmosphere. Join us for some great wings, some great beers, and a great show.
1402 Millersport Highway, bar and grill right there across the street from the Marriott. Great way to start your Bills weekend, Bills Chiefs. It's going to be a fun one. We'll see you on Sunday, everybody. Take care.